But I have a gift for you today. You see, Hanukkah really is about the Torah. And it is about the end times. That's me. In fact, what's the vision of Sukkat Shalom? You see, the vision of Sukkat Shalom is to see a community. To see a community experiencing Yeshua, the Torah, and Revelation for the end times. So this is who we are. This is our DNA. Amen. To experience Yeshua, we've experienced Him in worship, in the Word, in the fellowship, right? To experience the Torah and Revelation for the end times. And if you think I'm making this up, Yeshua in Matthew speaks of the abomination of desolation. You probably heard that phrase, right? That there will be a time when the Antichrist is going to come and set up some form of worship to himself or something. We can play with the meanings there. But he will set up this in the temple in Israel. Well, that's Hanukkah. So what happened in Hanukkah became a prophecy for the end time. Not only a prophecy, but a pattern. There is a pattern in Hanukkah for the end times. But it all had to do with the Torah. The whole thing was to wipe out Jewish identity. Not necessarily by killing all Jews, but by making them un-Jews. When you read First Maccabees, and I recommend for you to just take time, maybe Sunday afternoon, before the Cowboys, no, after the Cowboys, you choose, right? Before or after the Cowboys game. Don't recommend it that you read it during the Cowboys game.
No, sir.
Unless you're a lady and you'll say, I don't care what you're talking about. Unless you're not my wife. And so you can read First Maccabees. It's fascinating. It's long. It will take you a good sitting for you to read it, but you will learn so much. And you'll understand this is very much about the Torah. It was very much about forbidding the Jewish people to practice, all temple practices were banned. They were forced to eat non-kosher animals, on point of death. They would kill the parents that would circumcise their boys. I mean, this was no joke. And that was from the pressure from the outside. From the inside, though, there were so many who were so enamored with the culture of the time, with being accepted in Greek culture and society, that they were willing to even go to the point to change their circumcision so that they could participate in the gymnasium. They had actually built a gymnasium, a Greek gymnasium, where people would practice their sports in the nude. So this, and First Maccabee makes it clear that they were accepting the practices, when you translate it back into Hebrew, it will be the chukim of the nations. Accepting the chukim of the nation. What is that? Well, if you have been with us for a little while and you study, especially the book of Deuteronomy with us, if not, we'll get to it. You will see how the Torah really is all about the chukim and the mishpatim. What do I mean by this? Well, Yeshua said, they asked him, can you give us a summary of the Torah. What is the most important commandment? And he said, well, you got to love God. And I'll give you another one. You got to love people. You see, the chukim are the commandments. This is a Hebrew word that means, we translate it often as the statutes. You read it as the statutes. The mishpatim, you read them as the ordinances, the statutes and the ordinances. And you're like, I have no idea what that means. Some sort of law, right? So who cares? Well, you should. And because the chukim, these statutes, they are all about worshiping God, not according to the customs. This is often also translated as custom. Not according to the customs of the nations, but according to the revelation of the Torah. So at the time they were receiving, accepting, and actually pursuing the chukim of the nations. They were pursuing the customs, how the nations worshipped their gods. That's what they were doing. Well, I mean, really, that's when the early church threw out the Jewish people and threw out the Torah, they opened themselves to Greek philosophy and any kind of philosophy. And in the name of Christianizing the cultures as they were coming under their influence, then they took in a lot of practices from the nations, a lot of the chukim from the nations. That became a stumbling block for Jews to believe. So much so that this is one of the saddest things, that Jews will say, in a Jewish mind, saying no to Yeshua, saying no to Jesus, means saying yes to God. Because for them, believing and going with Jesus means to abandon the Torah. Means to abandon everything, the covenant that God gave them, to abandon their identity. So Hanukkah all over again. It's very sad, because as we know, the true faith, the true Yeshua, is all about the Torah. It's all about Jewish identity. It's all about Jew and Gentile, preserving who they are without one having to become like the other. And so Hanukkah is very much about the Torah and about the end times. So I want us then to, I want to give you a gift, and this gift is to understand the Torah, just to go behind the scenes, so to speak, and really understand what the Torah is as part of the occasion, part of the feast of Hanukkah, the celebration and the remembrance of Hanukkah. So the word Torah, if you go into a good Hebrew dictionary, you will find something similar to this. The word itself, Torah, is defined as teaching, instruction, and obviously a reference to the first 5 books of the Bible. When you look at the first 5 books of the Bible, you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So you have, in the beginning, when you look at the Hebrew names, right, you have Bereshit, in the beginning, Shemot, names, then you have Vayikra, which is Leviticus, which means, and he called. The book begins, and he called Moses. And God called Moses from the tent of meeting. And then the book of Numbers is actually in Hebrew called Bemidbar, which means in the wilderness. And the book of Deuteronomy is Devarim, or words. When you put it together, you have that in the beginning, names, which is really people, right? The names of people, represents people. So in the beginning, names he called in the wilderness to give them words. So God called his people out into the wilderness to give them the Torah. You know, I took a class last year on spiritual formation, and a lot of it was talking about spiritual practices like fasting and prayer, of course, prayer and reading scripture, but like practicing solitude and things like that. And so when I went to Israel on our study trip, some of you remember, it's been 2 years now, right? Right, Charlotte? Charlotte was in that trip. Yeah. So when we were, I had already taken this class, and you actually could see in some places, you could see the monasteries that were built. And I had a different take on that, because these monasteries were built in the wilderness, and they would go out there detaching themselves from everything to hear God. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that I endorse, I don't even know these guys, I'm not endorsing what they did or who they were, I don't know. But I was able to appreciate better the concept of going out into the wilderness to hear the voice. Now, it will be, fun to kind of go out into nature, right? Go out into the trails and commune with God, and you spend an hour or two and then you go home. But it's an entirely different thing if God takes away everything you have and causes you to move into a place where you don't even have water or food or anything like that. All the romances quickly go away. And he tells you, oh, this is a good thing for you. I just want you to hear my voice. You'll be like, excuse me. The funny thing is that Yeshua did that. And it says that the Spirit of God led him into the wilderness. Sometimes I feel the Spirit of God wants to lead me into some wilderness. Like, what are you talking about? You don't want me to eat for a day, 2 days, 3 days? What are you? I can't hear you. Yeah, he can take you into a wilderness so you can hear him, right? To quiet everything around so we can hear him. But the word Torah, teaching, instruction, comes from the word yara. And that's where you can appreciate what the Torah means, because yara means, if as a verb, it can mean to teach, to instruct, to give guidance. And so I want us to take a look at a few verses. And here's my gift to you. We're going to see a few verses with the word yara and see, I think as a result, you're going to have an enriched understanding of what the Torah is, what it does, and what it intends to do into our lives. So I'm going to be all over the place. If you are used to Bible games and all that stuff, you probably can keep up with me. Maybe Rustin can do that. I'm pretty sure he can. If not, you can just take notes. But Exodus 4:12, it says, "Now then go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say." That's the word, teach you, yara. It's not Torah, it's yara. Yes, Torah comes from yara, but we're seeing this word in without its technical term, without, if I may say so, without the baggage, without the burden of the word Torah, right? You know, which you can take it, well, you can take it on the rabbinic side, or you can take it even on the Christian side. This word carries a lot of burden. Everybody has an opinion of what the Torah is or should be. But I'm kind of taking us into the wilderness, just leaving everybody's opinion, and let's take a look behind the scenes at this word Yara, because it is a pure word. You probably never even heard it before, most of you. And through it, we can really understand and appreciate what the Torah really is. So God speaks to Moses and he says, I'm going to instruct you in what to say. So that's a pure form of what the Torah really is. It's an instruction. It's a teaching. Exodus 35:34. He also has put in his heart to teach both he and, this is speaking of, what's the guy's name? There were two guys filled with the Spirit to build the tabernacle. Holiab and Bezalel. That name is the one I was looking for in my brain, Bezalel. Because here it tells us the name Oholiab. It says, he also has put in his heart to teach both he and Oholiab. So God put in the heart of Bezalel to teach both he and Oholiab, the son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan. So the point here is to teach, to instruct in the arts. So the Spirit of God showed these guys, gave these guys artistic ideas. It couldn't just be any idea. It couldn't be any idea that could have taken into idolatry. You know, the way that they were supposed to design the tabernacle. Judges 13:8. It says, then Manoah entreated the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you have sent come to us again, that he may teach us what to do for the boy who is to be born. So these are the parents of Samson. So he is praying, can you teach me what to do, how to raise him up? You want him to be a special kind of a person. Can you give me instructions? That's the pure form of the word Torah. Give instruction from the Lord. Exodus 24:12. Now the Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and remain there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the Torah, with the law, with the Torah, and the commandment which I have written for their instruction. So the Torah that was written for Yara. So when you take the Torah and you teach it to others, you are doing Yara. You are giving instruction. You are teaching people. And that's the intention of the Torah. To give us instructions in how to do what it is that the Lord wants us to do. Leviticus 10:11, it says, and this is, of course, we're catching some of this in kind of mid-sentence, right? And it says, and so as to teach the sons of Israel all the statutes which the Lord has spoken to them through Moses. So the priests were supposed to teach the sons of Israel, to Yara, teach the instructions, the statutes, which the Lord has spoken. Leviticus 14:57. It says, to teach when they are unclean and when they are clean. This is the Torah of leprosy or skin disease. So the priests have the responsibility to teach when to teach people to know, so that people can know and understand and discern When am I unclean? How am I supposed to know when I am unclean? That was the role of the priest. So to take the Torah and to teach it, to explain the instruction from the Lord. Deuteronomy 24:8. 24:8. Be careful against an infection of leprosy or of skin disease, that you diligently observe and do according to all that the Levitical priests teach you or instruct you. So they are going to take the book of Leviticus and they're going to turn it into instructions, break it down for us, right? That is to teach, to instruct. That's the word yarah. Deuteronomy 33:10. They shall teach your ordinances to Jacob and your Torah to Israel. To teach the Torah. And it says, and they shall put incense before you and hold burnt offerings on your altar. So we know this is talking about the priests. They are to teach the Torah. Explain the instructions. 1 Samuel 12:23. 1 Samuel 12:23. Moreover, as for me, this is Samuel speaking, right? Moreover, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you, but I will instruct you in the good and right way. I will instruct you in the good and right way. This is the way of walking with God, according to the Torah. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to break it down so that it becomes instructions for you. 1 Kings 8:36. 8:36. Then hear in heaven and forgive the sin of your servants and of your people Israel. This is Solomon praying at the inauguration, at the dedication of the first temple, actually. So this is a Hanukkah verse, the dedication. That's what the word Hanukkah means. Then forgive the sin of your servants and of your people Israel. Indeed, teach them the good way in which they should walk. Teach them the good way in which they should walk. Again, the word yarah. 2 Kings 12:2. Jehoash did right in the sight of the Lord all his days, in which Jehoiada, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's easier to pronounce these names in Hebrew than in English. In which priest J, instructed him. Instructed him. 2 Kings 17:27. I'm giving you a lot. You can go home and do a Bible study looking at all this up. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, Take there one of the priests whom you carried away into exile, and let him go and live there, and let him teach them the custom of the God of the land. So this is, take one of the priests, take him back to Israel, so he can teach people there the customs of the God of the land, the God of Israel. Obviously, this guy didn't know much what he was talking about. But the priest knew what he was supposed to do. Just go and teach the Torah to those who are who remain in Israel, instead of being in the exile. 2 Chronicles 15:3. For many days Israel was without the true God, and without a teaching priest, and without Torah. Psalm 25:8. Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore he instructs sinners in the way. Instruct, that's yarah. So he takes the Torah and teach sinners his ways. And that is based on the Torah. Psalm 86:11. Teach me your way, O Lord. I will walk in your truth. Unite my heart to fear your name. We can't read these scriptures, we can't read these Psalms out of their Torah context. the way that the psalmist is praying, and the way that God does this is by using the Torah in his life. All right. The content of the Torah comes in two literary forms. You have commandments and you have sections of commandments, right? You can get yourself really bored and put yourself to sleep reading Leviticus. But you have the stories, and you love the stories, right? And it's cool to read the stories. But they're all one and the same Torah. How can the stories be Torah? Well, see, if you think they're law, then it doesn't fit. A story cannot be a law. But if you think of it as teaching, as instruction, then here's what you're going to find. You're going to find that the narrative, the stories of the Torah, illustrate what the commandments ordain. And so that's the reason why we have Genesis and Exodus before we enter into the commandments that begin in Exodus, before we go into Sinai. To show us how Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses and Israel, and Joseph, how they lived the Torah before it was revealed. They lived by faith. That's the heart of the instruction. So the instruction is for the person who's already been redeemed and who already calls him Adonai.
Right.
You understand the word Adonai means master. I have a master, and I am going to do what my master says. And what my master says are not suggestions. These are expectations. Of course, he doesn't want me to do them in my own strength. He provides the strength. And that's why it's so crucial that we understand the place of the stories in the Torah. And I'm going to conclude with this thought. The faith that we see in Genesis, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, what we see illustrated in them is a simple faith. It's a simple walk of hearing and obeying. That is the point of the narrative of the stories. To teach us that the Torah needs to be approached by hearing. And if you need a confirmation of that, then you can go to the passage that is the quintessential example of the Torah, which is the Shema. You realize that when they asked Yeshua, what is the number one commandment? He said, Shema. He said, the most important commandment, God is commanding you to do this thing. It is hear God. Hear God. Hear God. Live by the Spirit. The Spirit is going to lead you. Romans says that the requirement of the Torah is fulfilled in us who walk according to the Spirit and not according to the flesh. In other words, when you don't do it in your own strength according to the flesh, but you do it according to the power of the Spirit, you fulfill the requirement of the Torah, which is to love God and to love people. So the minutiae of understanding the Torah It's getting to understand the instruction of how, as we started at the beginning, how do I worship God not according to this world, but what is pleasing to Him? And how do I best love people? What is oppressive to people? And what is releasing freedom to people? That's loving people. You won't find it anywhere else. Only in the combination of Torah and Spirit. It's the only way. It's not Torah alone, and it is not Spirit alone. I'm sorry. It's not Spirit alone. It is the two. It is Torah and Spirit. That's the place of the stories. In that sense, the stories, the narratives, are very much, just as much Torah as the instructions, the commandments, the laws, Leviticus, and all of that. They're just as much law. There's no contradiction between the two. They complement each other. One shows you, illustrates for us how to walk the commandments. That they're not a burden, they're not bondage inducing or provoking. They're actually the opposite. And that is what it takes to live through the end times. You realize that every year on Hanukkah we read the same portions. Every year on Hanukkah we are reading Joseph. That's what we're reading every year on Hanukkah. Why? You think this was just coincidence and they didn't think, when they were putting all this together, all their readings together? Yeah, of course. And the Spirit of God, overseeing it all and using all of that, always wants to speak to us out of Joseph about Hanukkah. Why? Because in Joseph you have a man who lived in Egypt, who looked like an Egyptian, but was a man of the Word and a man of the Spirit. How do we know this? We talked about it in our Torah study today. He was a man of discernment, which is the Spirit, and he was a man of wisdom, which is the Word. So every year, not only did he live this way, but he raised children that way. He raised children in Egypt. And he taught them how to keep the integrity that he kept. So even in the middle of the chaos of the world, being a person of the Spirit and of the Word is the antidote for the pressures that we study about in Hanukkah. It is the answer for the end times. A people that is a prophetic people and a people of Torah. A people of the Torah. That's our calling. That's our Hanukkah calling. And that's my Hanukkah gift to you. That we come to understand better what this Torah is about. It's a beautiful gift, a beautiful instruction to know how to love God and love people. Amen? Amen. Amen.